My name is Cynthia Mutua. Consider me your informant. Remember to check us out on all social media platforms at DAESAK TV and at Cindy_Mutua, that is. And moving on to today's highlights. And locally, we have Wajakoya denies endorsing Raila for the presidency. Also, a fugitive on the most wanted list, Abdi Hussein Ahmed, with a 100 million bounty on his head, arrested in Meru. And some shopping centers will be closed on election day. Also, Linjiru's book that serves as caution to the perpetrators of evil. And internationally, we're going to be covering the story of the Brazilian twins who are joined at the head and have been successfully separated with the help of virtual reality. And Osama bin Laden's heir is killed. Also, a 4-day work week has already started trials. And in Japan, some companies are giving additional vacation days to non-smokers. Also, you can now work in some US states even without citizenship. And in our Did You Know segment, we're going to be covering effective tools to navigate a quarter-life crisis. So for more on that, stick with us. And we're going to start with today's first story. That is Wajakoya on Tuesday, August 2nd, in a video that went viral of him saying that he endorses Raila Odinga as the favorable presidential candidate. In the video that surfaced on social media platforms on Wednesday, Wajakoya was addressing supporters in a club where he referred to Odinga as a liberator. According to Professor Wajakoya, the video was placed out of context. Whereas the party leader addressed his supporters and accorded the other three presidential candidates some level of respect, biased media doctored the clip to suit and push their candidate, Raila Odinga. Speaking on the issue, Root spokesperson Wilson Muraini, aka Jemo Ulemse, stated that our attention has been drawn to a viral video clip showing our presidential candidate, Professor George Wajakoya, at an entertainment joint. We would like to categorically state that we have a presidential candidate who is on the ballot and will win this election. On Wednesday evening, Jemo explained that the clip was taken out of context and that Wajakoya was in a club in Kisumu, which is seen as Odinga's backyard, and thus had to use such political tactics to woo his supporters. Jemo insisted that they have not and will not endorse any other candidate, and that's a verification of the information from What's Up Today team. Moving on to another story, and these leading retailers, Naivas and Quickmart, have announced the closure of branches on election day. The closure of the branches, according to statements issued by the retailers, is to allow staff and partners to vote. They are set to resume full-scale operations on August 10th. Both Quickmart and Naivas have advised their customers to carry out prior shopping to avoid inconveniences during the store's closure. On the positive side, however, Naivas e-commerce platform will allow for goods orders, but no deliveries will be made on August 9th. Combined, the pair of leading retailers have a branch count of over 120 stores across the country. The temporary closure of branches will mean a further trimming to commercial activities for the election day, which has been traditionally gazetted as a holiday in Kenya. This means other key businesses, including banking halls, will also be shut for the day. It is advisable to do important tasks and transactions early. Now moving on to the next story of the arrest of a most wanted wildlife and drugs trafficker. The DCI has announced the arrest of Abdi Hussein Ahmed alias Abdi Kadi, a suspect wanted in the United States for wildlife and drug trafficking. Abdi Hussein Ahmed alias Abu Kadi was apprehended at a rental room in Maua, that is in Meru County, on Tuesday, following a tip-off from area residents through the DCI's anonymous hotline. Ahmed, alongside his accomplices Mawazu Kroma, who goes by the AKA of Kampla Man, and Amara Sheriff, who goes by the AKA of Bamba Isiaka, and Mansur Mohammed Suru, whose AKA is Mansur, were wanted in the US for allegedly taking part in a plot to smuggle rhinoceros horns and elephant tusks valued at more than $7 million US. That is approximately 833 million Kenyan shillings. And this happened on diverse dates between December of 2012 and May 2019. The base of operations was alleged to be in Uganda, where they smuggled approximately 190 kilograms of rhinoceros horns and at least 10 tons of ivory. And these were drawn from various East African nations to ready markets in the United States and Southeast Asia. According to the DCI, the transnational criminal enterprise is responsible for the death of over 100 elephants and more than 35 rhinoceros. This is obviously very nerve-wracking, given elephants are a major source of wildlife attraction in Kenya, and to top it, they are an endangered species. According to the DCI statement, the indictment followed a joint investigation of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Drug Enforcement Administration, that is the DEA. A federal grand jury in the Southern District of New York charged Ahmed and his other conspirators with conspiracy to distribute and possess with intent to distribute 1 kilogram or more of heroin, which carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years imprisonment. In May, the Kenyan and United States government put up a $2 million reward for information that may lead to the apprehension of Ahmed and Badru Abdul Aziz Saleh. That is approximately 233 million bounty on their heads. The pair were accused of allegedly trafficking heroin into the United States and smuggling wildlife destined for international markets out of Kenya and Uganda. Ahmed's arrest follows the arrest of his accomplice Badru Abdul Aziz Saleh, alias Badro, on May 31st, 1 week after a reward of $1 million was announced by the U.S. Department of State through the Transnational Organized Crime Rewards Program for information leading to the arrest and or conviction of Abdi Hussein Ahmed for participating in transnational organized crime, that is narcotics trafficking. The arrests come just 2 months after DCI boss George Kinoti and U.S. Ambassador Eric Nidler held a joint briefing on combating transnational organized crimes in Nairobi. DCI informed that the prosecution of this case was being handled by the U.S. Attorney's Office's Complex Frauds and Cybercrime Unit. Assistant United States Attorneys Sagar K. Ravi and Jared L. Schaefer are in charge of the prosecution. Now moving on to Lynn Njiru's book that was just launched. And former State House Press Secretary Lynn Njiru on Monday officially announced his memoir called The President's Pressman. Njiru, in the event held in Nakuru, gave a captivating speech endorsing the book as a truthful account of State House affairs, which demystifies untold stories and the traditional characteristics associated to it by the public. Njiru said that he hopes the book serves as a caution to the perpetrators of evil and a defining factor on the quality of leadership public servants offer to people when held to account. He stated that the book advises the ordinary citizen not to be deceived by the outward glitter and magnificence of palaces, that behind those facades of glory are numerous cases of dirty affairs that are unknown to the outside world. In a stern caution, he said, as public servants, history will interrogate, investigate, and reveal our deeds, whether heroic and public-spirited or evil. The choice is ours. He further called on leaders in the political front to keep the peace in the run-up to the August general election, which is just a few days away. The 73-year-old urged politicians to create an atmosphere that will not force Kenyans to flee from their beautiful country and allow our old men and women to enjoy their sunset years, as well as give our children and grandchildren an atmosphere to enjoy their youth and develop their God-given talents. The event was attended by Njiru's former colleagues, political leaders, Kenya Literature Bureau Managing Director Victor Lomeria, and other leaders. Moving on to international news, and conjoined twins in Brazil who are joined at the head, have been successfully separated with the help of virtual reality. 3-year-olds Bernardo and Arthur Lima underwent surgeries in Rio de Janeiro with direction from Great Ormond Street Hospital in London. The teams spent months trialing techniques using virtual reality projections of the twins based on CT and MRI scans. It was one of the most complex separation processes ever completed. For the first time, surgeons in separate countries wore headsets and operated in the same virtual reality room together. The twins had 7 surgeries involving more than 27 hours of operating time in the final operation alone and almost 100 medical staff. Speaking about the VR aspect of the surgery, Mr. Gilani narrated that it's really great to see the anatomy and do the surgery before you actually put the children at any risk. And that is very reassuring for the surgeons. In some ways, these operations are considered the hardest of our time. And to do it in virtual reality was just really man-on-man stuff. Previously, unsuccessful attempts to separate the boys meant their anatomy was complicated by scar tissue. Surgeons were absolutely shattered after the 27-hour operation, where they took only 4 15-minute breaks for food and water. But it was wonderful to see the family feeling over the moon afterwards. The boys' blood pressures and heart rates were through the roof until they were reunited 4 days later and touched hands. The twins are recovering well in hospital and will be supported with 6 months of rehabilitation. Since the parents of the boys came from their home in the Roraima region to Rio to seek help 2.5 years ago, they have become part of the family at the hospital. Bernardo and Arthur, at almost 4 years of age, are the oldest craniopagus twins, that is twins with a fused brains, to have been separated. 1 in 60,000 births results in conjoined twins, and only 5% of those are craniopagus. And the US killed Zawahiri in a drone strike in Afghanistan over the weekend. Al-Zawahiri took control over Al-Qaeda after Osama bin Laden was killed. This is a great milestone for peace, freedom, and stability around the world. Zawahiri served as bin Laden's deputy during the 9/11 attacks and is considered a key plotter. Zawahiri continued to pose an active threat to persons, interest, and national security, and it's unclear how Zawahiri's death will affect Al-Qaeda's operation. There are a lot of people that really didn't think Zawahiri had very much of an operational role. However, we need to be aware that terrorism is absolutely still a threat. Now, you remember back when we stated that the 4-day work week was being proposed. And now, for the past 8 weeks, thousands of people in the United Kingdom have tested a 4-day schedule with no cut in their pay. That could help usher in a new era of work. More than 2 years into the pandemic, many have burnt out, quit their jobs, or are struggling to make ends meet as record inflation takes a huge bite out of their paychecks. It's the world's biggest trial of a 4-day work week so far. Already, some workers have said they feel happier, healthier, and are doing better in their jobs. The 6-month pilot commits 3,300 workers across 70 companies to work 80% of the usual week in exchange for promising to maintain 100% of their productivity. The program is being run by a non-profit 4-day week global. Researchers will measure the impact the new working pattern will have on productivity levels, gender equality, and the environment as well as workers' well-being. At the end of November, companies can decide whether or not to stick with the new schedule. Some companies have banned all internal meetings longer than 5 meetings, kept longer than 5 minutes rather, kept all client meetings to 30 minutes, and introduced a traffic light system to prevent unnecessary disturbances. What is a traffic light system, you might ask? This is colleagues have a light on their desk and set it to green if they are happy to talk, amber if they are busy but available to speak, and red if they do not want to be interrupted. There's a good 25% chance that we don't get to keep it, but the teams so far are fighting incredibly hard for it. Until last month, Iceland had conducted the world's biggest pilot of a 4-day workweek between 2015 and 2019. The country put 2,500 of its public sector workers through 2 trials. Crucially, those trials found no corresponding drop in productivity and found a dramatic increase in employee well-being. For some, it's like a library setting. For 2 hours every morning and 2 hours every afternoon, staff ignores emails, calls, or Teams messages and concentrate on their projects. The whole place goes like a library and everybody just gets their head down and smashes through the work. Software company Asana found that the workers spend about 58% of their day on activities such as answering emails and attending meetings rather than the work they were hired for. The extra day has made space for many workers to take up new hobbies, fulfill long-standing ambitions, or simply invest more time in their relationships. Workers on the trial have taken up cooking classes, piano classes, volunteering, fishing, and roller skating. The 5-day working week is a 20th century concept, which is no longer fit for the 21st century. The results have exceeded everyone's expectations. And if you think that the 4-day work week is the only method being used to motivate workers, think again, because when we come back after the break, we are going to be talking about what workers in Japan are being given as an incentive to stop or quit smoking eventually. We'll be discussing this right after this short commercial break.
Right from inception, the DAESAK Media Services Limited has been committed to resolving the deficiency of empathy and progressive leadership and promoting mentorship in our social values system. Our vision and dream is to have a society where these values thrive for the well-being of all.
We strongly believe that every human has a right and a responsibility to self-actualize not only their individual potential, but that of the surrounding community.
Our media outlets use innovative broadcasts to highlight social challenges and chart the way forward to a progressive future where the elders embrace the energy of the young, while the young acknowledge the wisdom of their elders.
At DAESAK Media Services Limited, we have infused technical diligence to ensure that we are accessible at the convenience of you, our audience. Here, we employ creativity and calculated logic to ensure that our news are accurate, fair, relevant, and timely, and that our shows are fascinating. Our rate card is determined by our resolve to maintain a balance between the industry standards and giving our investors great value.
Please join us in our deep-rooted commitment to bridge the gap between status quo and the future we desire for the current and future generations.
DAESAK Media Services Limited,
where successful businesses
connect.
Thanks very much for staying with us. And the 4-day work week is not the only method being used to motivate workers to be more productive. Japan may have just found the best incentive to stop people from smoking. And spoiler alert, it is not rehab or counseling. In Japan, some companies are giving additional vacation days to non-smokers to match the time wasted by smokers taking cigarette breaks. Though a quick smoke break may only take 10 minutes or so, they add up. Marketing firm Piala Incorporation and a number of other companies are rewarding non-smoking employees who feel played by the extra hours they put in throughout the year with 6 extra paid vacation days. Japan is a country that has an entrenched smoking culture. Upon receiving a complaint about all the time off smokers take, the company's CEO Takao Asuka reportedly decided to encourage employees to quit smoking through incentives rather than penalties or coercion. So, friends, will you give up your daily cigarette breaks for extra time off? And this is very good news for people who are trying to work abroad and don't have the necessary papers for it. And Los Angeles County has nixed citizenship requirement for government jobs. The Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors voted unanimously with no discussion to allow the county to no longer require U.S. citizenship for government jobs. The policy includes exceptions for positions where U.S. citizenship is required by state and federal law. The vote took place last week. Those wishing to work for Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, as well as other peace officers that are hired by the county, will still be subject to citizenship requirements. According to the adopted motion, the new policy ensures that applicants for employment are fairly and equitably considered without regard to national origin, citizenship, or other non-merit factors that are not substantially related to successful performance of the duties of the position. Last year, the Board of Supervisors had asked for an analysis of whether scrapping citizenship requirements for board-appointed county officers or department heads was legal. Los Angeles community is a community of immigrants from each corner of the world, and as one of the largest employers in the region, they strive to be an inclusive and diverse workforce. The argument was that barriers to development based on cultural, racial, ethnic, or religious characteristics were contrary to the core values, and citizenship overlaps these demographic characteristics. And that is it for today's news. But we are going to come back with our Did You Know segment. We're going to be discovering what is a quarter life crisis and how do you handle a quarter life crisis. We're also going to be discussing today's trailblazer, who is none other than the deceased Nichole. See you right after this short break. Thanks very much for staying with us. Remember, this is What's Up Today, your Surefire Daily Updates, and I'm your host, Cindy Mutua. Now, in today's very informative segment, we have our Did You Know segment. And what is a quarter life crisis? Similar to the more common midlife crisis, the quarter life crisis is a period of uncertainty and questioning that typically occurs when people feel trapped, uninspired, and disillusioned during their mid-20s to early 30s. So, if this is your age bracket, listen closely because I have just the right tips for you from experts. The generation entering adulthood now faces novel, sometimes exhausting challenges, just like midlife. Quarter life can bring its own crisis. Trying to separate from your parents or caregivers and forge a sense of self is a struggle. Many young people today struggle to afford college or decide not to attend. And the existential crisis that used to hit after graduation descends earlier and earlier. Nearly 1/3 of Gen Z adults are living with their parents or other relatives and plan to stay there. Many find themselves so entangled in day-to-day monetary concerns, from the relentless crush of student debt to swelling costs of everything, that they feel unable to consider what they want for themselves long-term. The paralysis is often worsened by mounting climate anxiety and the slog of a multi-year pandemic that has left many young people mourning family and friends, or smaller losses like conventional college experience or the traditions of starting a first job. Here are experts' top pieces of advice on how to navigate a quarter life crisis today. Number 1, take yourself seriously. Set aside time to be selfish. Schedule reminders to check in with yourself roughly every 3 months to examine whether you are in your life and whether you feel stuck or dissatisfied. From there, you can start to identify aspects of your life that you want to change. Pay full attention to what you're naturally curious about and not to dismiss your interests as stupid or futile. Maybe there's a place you have always wanted to visit or a language you want to learn. Maybe you want to take up a new hobby or research a part of your family history. Start to give your own inner life the respect that it's due. However, there is a difference between self-interest and self-indulgence. Number 2 is be patient. Stop thinking that once you turn 18, you're an adult and all ready to go. Here are some tips for parents to help their struggling teens. Look for changes, notice shifts in sleeping and eating habits with your teen, as well as any issues he or she might be having at school, such as sleeping grades. Watch for angry outbursts, mood swings, and a loss of interest in activities they used to love. Stay attuned to their social media posts as well. Keep the lines of communication open. If you notice something unusual, start a conversation, but your child might not want to talk. In that case, offer him or her help in finding a trusted person to share the struggles with instead. Seek out professional support. A child who expresses suicidal thoughts may benefit from a mental health evaluation and treatment. You can start by speaking with your child's pediatrician or a mental health professional. In an emergency, if you have immediate concern for your child's safety, do not leave him or her alone. Call a suicide prevention lifeline and lock up any potentially lethal objects. Children who are actively trying to harm themselves should be taken to the closest emergency room. Quarter lifers may be feeling the pressure to race through each step of their lives, craving the sense of achievement that comes with completing a task. But learning to listen to oneself is a lifelong process. Instead of searching for quick fixes, young adults should think about longer-term goals, such as starting therapy that stretches beyond a handful of sessions, building healthy nutrition and exercise habits, working toward self-reliance. And finally, don't be afraid to make a big change and know when to call your parents and when to call on yourself. Quarter life is about the journey from dependence to independence, learning to rely on ourselves. And from there, we're moving on to the section of today's trailblazer. Who are trailblazers, rather? These are people who are important in history. These are people whom, without the history of the nation or the world, wouldn't be as it is today. And today's trailblazer, she was among the first Black women to have a leading role in a TV series. She later worked with NASA to recruit minorities for the space program. Nicheale Nichols, however you call her, starred on Star Trek in 1967. She played Lieutenant Uhura, an officer and a highly educated technician who maintained a business-like demeanor in performing her duties. The actress, revered by Star Trek fans, died on Saturday in Silver City at age 89. The cause of death was heart failure. Miss Nichols had a long career as an entertainer, beginning as a teenage super club singer and dancer in her hometown and later appearing on television. Here are some of her greatest achievements. As a striking beauty, Miss Nichols provided a thrill of sexiness on the bridge of the Enterprise. She was generally clad in a snug red doublet and black tights. Ebony magazine called her the most heavenly body in Star Trek on its 1967 cover. Her role, however, was both substantial and historically significant. Miss Nichols was among the first Black women to have a leading role in a network television series, making her an anomaly on the small screen, which until that time had rarely depicted Black women in anything other than subservient roles. In a November 1968 episode, Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura are forced to embrace by the inhabitants of a strange planet, resulting in what is widely thought to be the first interracial kiss on television history. the sitcom Julia, she became the first black woman to star in a non-stereotypical role in a network series. But Uhura's influence reached far beyond the television. In 1977, Miss Nichole began an association with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, contracting as a representative and speaker to help recruit female and minority candidates for spaceflight training. The following year's class of astronaut candidates was the first to include women and members of the minority groups. She is also lauded for her help in diversity in space exploration. Miss Nichole was a ballet dancer as a child and had a singing voice with a naturally wide range, more than 4 octaves. While in high school, she landed her first professional gig. There, she was seen by Duke Ellington, who employed her a year or 2 later with his touring orchestra as a dancer in one of his jazz suites. Miss Nichole appeared on other television shows over the years, among them Peyton Place in 1966, Head of the Class in 1988, and Heroes in 2007. She also appeared on stage in Los Angeles, including in a one-woman show in which she did impressions of and paid homage to black female entertainers who preceded her, including Lena Horne, Pearl Bailey, and Eartha Kitt. That's it for today's Trailblazer. Nichole unfortunately passed away. May her soul rest in peace, but her impact in history cannot and will not be ignored. Well, that's what's up today. My name is Cynthia Mutua. I've been your host, and you can check us up on all platforms at DAESAK TV and at Cindy_Mutua. See you tomorrow, same time, same place, for information that shows how the world around you is affecting how you're living. Have a lovely time.